Hello and welcome to the Sports Grad Podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. I'm your host, Nathan Peroni, and here at Sports Grad, we've helped people land 827 jobs in sport. A recent shout out goes to Andrew Hawkins for landing a role at Seven Network as a senior researcher for the upcoming Commonwealth Games. Congrats, Andrew, and wishing you all the best in the new exciting role. Now, on this podcast, I chat with people in the industry and find out how they got hired into dream jobs in sport. If you want to know what people are doing to break in and grow their career, make sure to follow the pod and subscribe to our newsletter for even more advice. Or if you want to give yourself a competitive advantage in the job market and put your career on a rapid new trajectory, go to our website and apply for the next cohort of the Sports Grad Method program. Now, coming up on the show today is Matt Windley, Chief Executive Officer at Bruce Media. Matt has a fascinating journey working in sport, which started with ambitions from a young age to work as a sports journalist at Herald Sun and ultimately doing so straight out of high school for an incredible 10 years working alongside some of the biggest names in sports journalism like Mike Sheehan. Matt's passion for growing soccer, or as we refer to in the pod as football, in this country has led him to leading a bid for prospective A-League side Team 11, support Melbourne City's move to Casey Fields, lay the foundations for Auckland FC, and now tells the stories of the world game at creative media and marketing agency Bruce Media. Matt has been a popular face around football recently with Bruce Media's Breaking Barriers documentary, which is likened to the global phenomenon Welcome to Wrexham on a smaller scale. Plenty of incredible stories and learnings in this conversation, so grab a pen and enjoy this chat with Matt.
Hey guys, Ruben Williams here, founder of Sports Grad. We'll be back to the episode in just a second, but I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Sports Grad Method program, which has been helping people land jobs at major sporting bodies in as little as 14 days and doesn't require you to take out a massive debt to get started. If you are looking to make a jump into the sports industry, but nothing seems to be working for you right now, then why not apply for the Sports Grad Method program? Inside, you'll get given a proven playbook and a one-on-one industry mentor, as well as access to the Sports Grad network, plus much, much more, all of which have helped people land over 800 roles in sport. If you're ready to back yourself and fully go after your career and not let life get away from you and wonder, what if I'd only given that a shot? Then you're the kind of person who we'd love to work with. So head to sportsgrad.com.au/program and you can apply to join us.
Matt Windley, welcome to the Sports Grad Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. You're the talk of Australian football right now.
I am very sorry for everybody having to put up with my ugly mug in everywhere at the moment, right? So hopefully that starts to subside a little bit more soon. But
you must be getting used to be on a camera and speaking like this on a mic. And
well, I mean, it's funny you say that because that used to be my life, right? Back in Herald Sun / Fox Sports days and all that sort of stuff. Like I was in front of camera, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. So it's probably just like riding a bike, I guess. It's like I've done a lot of stuff obviously over the last few years, which we'll talk about, which have been a little bit more behind the scenes. And I don't mind sitting in front of a camera doing all that sort of stuff. But I am looking forward to being able to push more of our Berwick people out in front of the camera rather than having me. But we can talk about that as well.
Berwick alumni, me and you.
Exactly. Although you're Beaconsfield, aren't you? Technically I am now too.
Technically it was Berwick. I think it was Beaconsfield when I grew up, and then it changed to Berwick even though we didn't move house. So.
Oh, get out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I did not know that.
Yeah, okay. Proud Southeast man.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll get to what Breaking Barriers is and all of that later on. Accreditation-wise, did you bring for our wall?
I did.
What have you got here?
I brought an Asian Champions League one.
It's a young-looking mat.
It is a very young-looking mat. It's 2016. It might not be exactly the year that I was looking to bring it in, but I had the absolute pleasure of going to Japan at one point. I think it was 2014, the year that the Wanderers won, and covered an away game for the Wanderers and an away game for Melbourne Victory. They both happened to be in Tokyo back-to-back.
Yeah,
so both clubs sort of pitched in and we sort of split it 3 ways between the Herald Sun and Daily Telegraph and the two clubs. Which was an amazing experience. But the reason I brought it in, I was such a massive advocate for the Asian Champions League and always tried to cover it as much as humanly possible. Just found it so intensely interesting dealing with different clubs, different styles of game, amazing players playing in it, all that sort of stuff. I just never quite understood, and still don't to this day, understand why it just hasn't sort of caught on with everybody else
Get
as
the
much.
appreciation.
Yeah.
When we're recording this, City played today, I think,
Yes.
in the round of 16.
Yes.
So hopefully they're through when this episode comes out.
Correct.
And they can keep progressing to help more of the Aussie clubs
Correct.
make it to the Champions League.
Yeah, love the competition. So yeah, always had fun going and covering games, not just in Asia, but obviously in Australia as well. So
Amazing.
that's my accreditation.
Love it. Before we get going to, I will just say we'll reference the round ball game, football, not soccer.
You call it whatever you want.
But I'm going to say football because from our backgrounds as well.
Sure.
It'll make sense.
Sure.
So first off, we like to start with some quick fire questions, get to know you a little bit better.
Yep.
So what inspired you to work in sport?
I knew from the age of 6 years old that I wanted to be a sports journalist at the Herald Sun. I just obsessed over sport as a kid, all sorts of sports. Loved Bruce McAvaney, loved my stats. I think I was a really tall kid. I used to go and bug like the grade 5s and 6s when I was in prep and like go play footy with them, and I was probably the same size as some of them. And I would come back in from lunchtimes and like write down my stats and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, wow.
So honestly, I knew from that age that I wanted to be.
Did you have an inspiration, someone writing at the Herald Sun that you were like often
Later on,
reading about?
yeah, later on, absolutely, yeah, really aspired. I looked up to people like Mike Sheehan and Damien Barrett and Mark Robinson, Mark Stevens, all that sort of stuff. To then later on call them colleagues, which we'll get to. It was pretty cool. But yeah, that was sort of my one-track mind from very early on.
Awesome. What was your first ever job out of sport and your first ever sport-related job?
So the only other job I had not in sport was that first quintessential job, checkout chicking at Safeway back in the day, Ashwood, where I met my now lovely wife. Actually, we flirted over the registers and got together when we were in. Oh no, I was in year 12. She was first year uni. So yeah, I was pretty cool going out with a uni.
Nice love story.
Yeah, and been together ever since. But yeah, no, as I said, that one-track mind of wanting to be a sports journalist at the Herald Sun from the age of 6. I started working at the Herald Sun 2 months after I finished high school. So
Incredible.
As an 18-year-old. So I think I'm literally the last person to do it that way. I think so. I must have broken the system. I stand to be corrected, but as far as I'm aware, at least definitely coming through the sport department, I was the last one.
Cool. We'll get into that shortly.
Cool. Sorry.
No, that's okay. After high school, what extra study did you do, if any?
Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went, as I say, my study was done answering phones, answering emails, picking up papers off the printing press at the Westgate printing site at midnight, taking them back to the office, learning from all the journalists on the job. That was my education. And if I had my time again, I would absolutely do it all over again. It was a blast and I learned so much. I should qualify that by saying I've subsequently done a little bit of study at uni, done MBA, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, okay.
No sort of like...
Out of school straight away.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one interview question you were asked to answer for the job you're in now, or one question you like to ask people that you hire?
For the job I'm in now, or can I go back to my first one? Can
Yeah.
I go back to my first job?
Of course.
Sure. The strangest interview question I got asked at my interview for the cadetship for the Herald Sun was, is that a pink wristband that you're wearing underneath your shirt? And my answer was yes, and the reason I was wearing a pink wristband underneath my shirt was because I had to come back from schoolies on the Gold Coast to do my cadetship interview at the Herald Sun. But I was going back to the Gold Coast, and that pink wristband demonstrated that I was overage and got me into all the things that I wanted to get into as an overage, or not, you know what I mean, a person of 18.
Yes.
On the Gold Coast.
Wow.
And if I lost that wristband, I wouldn't have been able to get into certain areas. So I had to keep it on, but it accidentally snuck out from underneath my shirt, my very oversized.
Did you tell them what it was?
Yeah, 100%. I told them.
Yeah.
And then we ended up spending it was a great icebreaker because we ended up spending like 10 minutes talking about, right, if I was a journalist on the Gold Coast covering schoolies for the Herald Sun, what stories would I do? And there was, remember these red frogs people, I don't know, for anyone out there that's gone to schoolies on the Gold Coast, I'm not sure if that's a thing. Obviously, I'm old, so that was a long time ago.
I remember the red frogs down Phillip Island.
So we spoke about that a lot, and a few other different things. So it was a great icebreaker, but it also, I suppose, demonstrated as well, if I was being sneaky, like I want this. I've come back from schoolies on the Gold Coast
sure.
to do this, and now I'm going back. But
icebreakers are good in interviews. Calms the nerves, I think.
definitely.
Yeah. A book or podcast recommendation that's helped your career?
Everything is Marketing was the favorite book that I read during my MBA process. Would recommend that to anyone that's got any interest in doing, well, actually pretty much anything in the business side of things, because I think marketing is obviously so important to all facets of business. It's a really, really easy read. The name of the author escapes me right now. It's a lovely orange book with white writing on the front. I'll get you if you want to put it out there, I'll get you the name and the title. Oh, sorry, the author's name. But yeah, you can smash through that in a few days, and there's a lot of really handy tips in there.
And last quick fire, if you could try another job in sport for a day, what would it be?
I'd have to be an athlete. Like, I suppose the reason I'm in sports administration is because I'm not good enough to, kick a ball around or swim faster or whatever, right? So,
Like a lot of us.
Yeah, have to be an athlete.
Love it. So we'll jump into more of your background in sport. Firstly, I just want to speak about, where does the passion for football come for you? Like, obviously, you went into sport journalism at the start.
Yep.
You've been in a lot of football jobs through your career. Where does it all start for you?
So I was a new breed football fan, right? So growing up in Melbourne, I was on a steady diet of footy during the winter, cricket during the summer, and had no idea about soccer, no idea about the old NSL, anything like that. We as a family moved to New Zealand for a few years when I was in primary school, which I think was a real sort of foundational experience for me, because it sort of broadened my horizons beyond that sort of Melbourne myopic bubble. Got into rugby over there, played that a fair bit when we came back as well. I didn't necessarily pick up soccer per se, but yeah, again, as I say, got exposed to more sports than just the meat and potatoes diet of footy and cricket. And then, I became a new breed football fan. I think the 2002 World Cup being in Korea and Japan and our time zones was really sort of seminal for me, and sort of seeing a lot of those games and sort of being inspired by that. FIFA video games, like I don't say that flippantly, like it's a thing, right? Like I became an ice hockey fan as a kid too, like playing NHL on the PlayStation, right? So that was important. And then, sort of just got hooked on the Socceroos 2006 World Cup qualifying campaign. I say campaign deliberately because there was the Confederations Cup, there were the qualifiers against the Solomons, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously November 16 and so on and so forth. And that was obviously around the time that the A-League started. So I jumped on board that, really early with some friends from school and one of my brothers, and just loved it ever since. And then, knew when I was at the Herald Sun, it wasn't a preordained plan from myself to want to necessarily cover football straight away. I really enjoyed covering the AFL for a long time and a lot of other sports. But as the A-League started to develop in sort of prominence, I started to get a taste for wanting to go and report on it. And then was lucky enough to sort of carve out that opportunity.
Fantastic. And you just spoke about the Herald Sun there. So what was it like firstly working at the Herald Sun, and how do you land that job in the first place?
So I'll go the second question first.
Yeah.
As I say, one track mind, was always going to work at the Herald Sun, and to the point where I chose all my high school subjects based on that. I ditched maths and sciences like as early as humanly possible so I could just concentrate on the humanities. I applied for the cadetship for the first time in year 10 and had to do a big assignment and stuff on that. And I was like telling mates like, I might not be finishing school. Like I might be going straight to the paper. Like, I was working in cadetship. Clearly naive, but that was never going to happen.
The ambition worked.
Year 11, then I was smart enough again, I suppose, I knew, right, they're not going to take me, but I'll apply in year 11, knowing that then when I can apply in year 12, and then I can actually be taken seriously, that they'll be like, well, this guy is actually like fair income. He wants to, wasn't just I woke up in the morning and let's apply for a cadetship. Like he's actually seriously sort of taking this forward. Before that, I'd done like lots of work experience at the local Leader newspaper, got my name published a bunch of times, did a bit of work experience with SEN, radio station. So then as I say, I started advancing through the stages of the cadetship process. I was running that parallel to doing my VCE. So I think I had my VCE English exam on the Friday, and then I had a cadetship exam at the Herald Sun on the Saturday. And then I obviously mentioned the schoolies example before of the interview. So
Yeah.
Didn't actually end up technically getting a cadetship in the end. I got given a full-time editorial assistant job, which again, I think was just an amazing grounding for me to then go and learn on the job, and then ended up basically ticking off all the different experience points of a cadetship over the course of the first year and a half or so I was there. And within a year I'd moved full-time to the sports desk. I did an editorial assistant job for a year, just a junior reporter job, for a year there. And then within 6 months of finishing that, was back there full-time. And then, to answer your first question, what was it like working there? It was a dream come true. Like it was incredible. Like, as I say, like I'm idolizing people like Mike Sheehan and Damien Barrett and all that sort of stuff. And now I'm working with them and getting advice off them and sitting in meetings with them, sitting around talking about sport all day and writing about going to footy matches and all. Like it was as a job, like as a 19, 20-year-old at that point. Like it's.
What was the imposter syndrome like for you there? Like we've one of the youngest by a long way in that office.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Man, I was the baby. I was the baby in there almost until I left when I was 28. I reckon I still was the youngest in the sport department at that point.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't until my beautiful friend Sammy Landsberger came along when we were in our early 20s that I had someone that was sort of remotely my age in the sport writing sort of realm. Lauren Wood as well. We're all sort of similar sort of age. But I'm trying to remember. I don't think there was anyone younger than me even when I left. So I don't think there was any imposter syndrome early on because, as I say, like I had worked, there was a bit of luck obviously involved in getting in, but also I didn't know anyone either. Like it wasn't as if like I was the son of a former journalist or anything like that. Like I worked my ass off to get to that point. So I knew that I deserved to be there. I did, though, maybe think it wasn't quite imposter syndrome, but as I was advancing through, I sort of felt that I would have to leave in order to shake that baby thing. Like I would always, I feel like if I was still there today, and this is not a slight on anyone there, if I was still there today, I'd still be looked at as the baby. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Even though I'd gathered all this great sort of experience sort of along the way. So...
There's barriers to progress.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And maybe that was just in my head. Maybe it would have organically sort of, changed over time. But that was, rather than imposter syndrome, just that sort of like, you can take me a little bit more seriously.
Yeah. And was it important for you to diverse yourself across different sports whilst you were at the Herald Sun as well?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, that sort of fitted into my love of all sports, right? Like I enjoyed covering the footy. I got quite sick of covering the footy eventually. I'm an Olympic snuffy. I love my rugby, all sorts of different things. So it was really important to me to cover as many different sports as I could. And I sort of found myself over time probably wanting to sort of emulate like a Ron Reed sort of type who was a senior sports writer there and sort of had like the Mike Sheehan sort of imprimatur of being able to just go and cover whatever event he wanted at whatever sport and write columns sort of about them. I wanted to do that sort of eventually. That was sort of where I was heading.
Do you have like a biggest story you look back on as something you covered or that you're most proud of?
Biggest story?
Yeah, whilst you're at Herald Sun.
I was never a great news journalist. Like I don't make no bones about that. I'm not designed for that. I love getting to know people and writing great features about them. So that was always my favorite. And I hit a really good run of form, if you want to call it that, sort of maybe 4 or 5 years into my footy writing career, where I was becoming one of the better feature writers around. I won the AFL Media Rising Star Award. I came runner-up to Caroline Wilson one year as best feature writer in the industry. I was runner-up to just the AFL Players Association run a thing where they announce like their favorite story of the year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And I was runner-up to this Channel 7 story that they did on Jeremy Cameron. The story that I had written, which I'm probably the most proud of to this day, was a story with Dale Morris, the Western Bulldogs defender, who I sat down with him and his wife. He was coming back from his horrendous broken leg, and talking about the fact that, long story short, the blame that he was putting on himself for the pressure he was putting on his family as a result of everything that he was going through, bringing his wife into early labor, risking, the health and, the health and well-being of their child who was born early as a result of, he thinks, the stress that, he put on the family, all that sort of stuff. So to have them, talk about their story in such a raw and candid way, and then be able to write about that. Dale in the Footy Record one year, so he was asked who's your favourite sports journalist, and he wrote me. Like, that was really cool. So yeah, it was those feature stories, and moving into a football realm, like, it was being able to either sit down with all the players and write about their stories, or be trusted by an Ange Postecoglou or a Kevin Muscat or a John Van Schip to, go behind the wall, go behind, the barriers and report on things about, team meetings and fly on the wall stuff for a week in the life of an A-League club. Like,
how do you build that trust? Cool. I imagine a lot of people that, if they're listening and wanting to be a journo, obviously you're saying it's a key part of it, but how do you start to build that relationship that then they trust you to come behind the scenes, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it's just intrinsic in who you are and just trying to be a trustworthy person. I suppose then you talk the talk, but then you also walk the walk in the sense of not writing stuff that's sort of wrong, for starters, and too scurrilous. It was interesting, like that yin and yang relationship that I had with Dave Davutovic, who was my co-reporter at the Herald Sun. He was the better news reporter. Like, he's got the best contact book, probably still to this day, in Australian football. So he was always able to get the good stories, and I make no apologies for the fact that I said it to him a million times, and I've said it publicly. I was the better writer, so I was the better features writer, all that sort of stuff. So we melded perfectly. But if a club was ever going to choose the person out of the two of us to go and sit behind the four walls or within the four walls for a week, it was always going to be me, because I was that was the sort of the style of writing that I would have, right? So the flip side of that is, was I maybe then too soft or whatever, potentially. But I always felt like I wrote the stories that needed to be written, that I had access to, and I gained access to some good news stories over the journey because players or coaches or whatever would tell me things in trust because they knew that I would treat those stories in the right way, right? So you can only just develop that sort of over a period of time. I still wrote, analysis pieces, and I still, wrote when I needed to, that if, a player wasn't playing well or a coach was under pressure or all that sort of stuff. But I guess I did it in a way over time that still enable people to think that I was being fair and reasonable. So, and
now you work with Dave.
And now I was always going to end up working with Dave again. Like, he's one of my best mates in the world. We have this incredible relationship where we're just so honest, open and honest with each other. There's never a terse word spoken. So are we getting into Bruce stuff later or not? Or are we happy here now?
We'll jump into Bruce soon.
All right, cool. I'll pause it at that. Yeah.
Post Herald Sun.
Yes.
Team 11's a big part of
my journey.
Your journey in the football world and people knowing who you are. You mentioned to me you had a big sliding doors moment with Tony Issing. Is that the right pronunciation?
Icing. Yeah.
Icing, sorry. Who was part of the inspiration for Melbourne Victory becoming a club.
Yep.
Can you just talk to us about how does Team 11 even start? Where do you get involved? And how does it get to the point where we get close, but it doesn't eventuate into a club?
Sure. Tony Icing, just to then make the story in a couple of minutes' time make more sense, basically started Melbourne Victory. He was the brains trust behind it. There's plenty of different books and all that sort of stuff that outline his historical significance to the club in terms of helping start that up. And he's a friend of mine, and was always a trusted sort of advisor of mine, confidant, blah 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 blah. So Team 11, they being the FA, were always gearing towards adding another couple of clubs to the competition in and around that sort of 2017, 18, 19 period.
And this is for the A-League, for people that don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes, for the A-League.
I should have mentioned.
Sorry, for the A-League. Yep. The race, quote unquote, for that's really started unofficially to start gearing up in about 2016. It was sort of well known. South Melbourne and then further to that, while it was seemingly an open race, there was this feeling that there was going to be a third club in Melbourne and a third club in Sydney. So South Melbourne had very much put their hand up and put their hat in the ring for it. And we were writing a lot of stories about that in the Herald Sun. It was around the time when the FFA Cup started up. I used to love doing stories on South Melbourne and other clubs that were sort of taking part in that and sort of getting to know their story better and the historical significance of these clubs and whatnot. Developed a really good relationship with people at South Melbourne, including Bill Papastudiadis, who's the president now. And then there was always talk about a club in Geelong, and Steve Horvat, obviously at the time, was talking about that. That Geelong bid ultimately morphed its way into, as you well know, the Western United or Western Melbourne Group bid. But there was no one talking about the Southeast. And so I always knew, and Dave agreed, that if they were ever going to bring a third team in Melbourne into the A-League, it had to be in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. It was just unequivocally of that belief. But no one was talking about it. So literally just genuinely, there was a time, as I say, where we were starting to write more and more expansion stories, quote unquote, and no one was talking about the Southeast. So I just called up or emailed or whatever, 6 local club presidents of the biggest clubs in Casey and Dandenong. I think off the top of my head, it was Berwick City, Dandenong City, Dandenong Thunder, Springvale White Eagles, Pakenham maybe, Casey Comets, South Springvale. Anyway.
Is this you emailing from a Herald Sun email?
Herald Sun. Yeah, it was all Herald Sun. It was all above board. And basically one question, would you like to see an A-League club in the Southeast? And of course they all said yes. Yeah. And then so I just got some quotes from them and ran a story in the paper. It was a legitimate story, just like sort of all these clubs, call for an A-League club in the Southeast. Anyway, Tony calls me the next day and he's like, is there anything to this story? I'm like, no. Yes, insofar as these clubs are saying it would be a great idea to have an A-League team in their backyard, but as far as I know, that there's no one pushing for it. He's like, I reckon I know some people that would be interested in putting money behind something like that. And so it made me think, you know what? If no one's doing anything about this, why don't I do something about this? Why don't we do something about this? So I had some contacts at the Casey Council. Dave had some contacts at the Dandenong Council via his work at Dandenong City, because he grew up playing at Chelsea Hajduk, which then became Dandenong City Soccer Club. And we pitched it to them and sort of got the Casey Council and the Dandenong Council together. And luckily they thought it was a great idea. And 2, they agreed right off the bat that Dandenong would be a perfect place for a stadium and that Casey would be a perfect place for a training base at Casey Fields. And so they agreed to work together on it. And I worked behind the scenes with them, sort of in an unofficial and voluntary capacity for about a year or so. And we sort of, during that time, did that sort of launch event, people like Vince Grella and Jackson Irvine, Bailey Wright, all got on board. Did promotional material, blah, 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 blah. The council started putting some money into it in the sense of divesting a bit of time and energy and resources internally into a little bit of project management and research into the stadium sort of piece and the training base build piece. Greg O'Rourke and David Gallup knew that I was working on this while I was also working at the Herald Sun, and they said, don't quit your day job until there's actually a process to start. They let me know in, I think it was February or March of 2018, that the process was about to start. So I handed in my notice at the Herald Sun, started full-time work with the 3 councils, the Dandenong, Casey and Cardinia, all split my wage 3 ways.
So you did over a year basically volunteering to help bring this to life. Yeah,
more, year and a half.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And what hours are we talking a week that you were doing outside of Herald Sun to bring this all to this point?
It was pretty ad hoc. You look around that sort of April, May period of 2017, I was doing a lot of work. And then it sort of ebbed and flowed. That there could go months during that year or a month during that year where I wouldn't necessarily do anything because the council people had it sort of under control, and I was obviously respecting the fact that I wasn't sort of being paid for it at that point.
Yeah.
But then, it was always hopefully going to get to a point that I could end up turning it into a job, and it did. And the rest is history.
How long is it from getting the full-time job to then the final announcement that who was successful being Western? But
yes.
How long were you working full-time?
I started work with the councils in the first week of April 2018. And then the announcement was on December 13, 2018.
Okay.
So
yes.
8
months.
Yeah, 8-9 months.
Yeah.
And in that time too, as my wife always reminds me, we had our second child, which was good. Don't advise having a baby in the middle of trying to run an A-League bid, that's for sure. And yeah, it was just an absolute whirlwind.
What were some of your biggest learnings and biggest regrets from the whole process?
Oh, learning's too many to count. Reflecting back on the the theme of Sports Grad podcast, probably realized very quickly how much of a solid grounding journalism is to then do other things in life. Like you become, I could do interviews with the Prime Minister or the Premier, or interview with man on the street and everyone in between, and treat them the same, communicate with them the same, be as nervous or not talking to them. And so then walking into rooms with multimillionaires and asking them for lots of money to put behind an A-League bid, or, people in government or people at council or whatever, like, yeah, I didn't feel out of place doing that sort of stuff, I think, because of that grounding in journalism. So that confidence, I suppose. Learned a lot about financial stuff, community engagement. Like it was, you had to do everything. Like had a really solid core team of 4 of us. Amazing lady called Emma Mickey, amazing man called Paul Kearsley, and another also fantastic guy, Steve Bramley, who's a Kiwi, who was working on the finances. But yeah, Paul and Emma both work for Dandenong. And so it was just the 4 of us, like in the trenches doing felt like 28 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we were doing everything, right? So there wasn't sort of an aspect of club or business that sort of didn't get to have a bit of work experience in. I always say, like, between that and then the Melbourne City stuff, which we'll talk about in a sec, in the space of 3 or 4 years, I would have packed in 10 to 15 years worth of work experience, which was like invaluable.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Regrets, a few. I wouldn't change much about the way that we approached the bid. We were very open. We were very transparent. We were very honest. We were very community first. And I think that was demonstrated by the amount of support that we were able to garner from the local community. I think I've said this a couple of times before, but I think if I had time again, like, the councils were amazing and couldn't have done a better job in terms of, putting themselves out there and putting themselves forward to sort of bring this to fruition. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they weren't going to own the club. It was going to be the private investors. And I think maybe if we'd probably transitioned power to those private investors a little bit earlier, I think it might have made us a little bit more agile in the closing stages to be able to potentially pivot or raise a little bit more money, which might have made a difference or not, who knows. And I think, again, being self-reflective, like I was a 28-year-old, 29-year-old journalist being the face of this A-League bid, like, and I think was doing the best that I could, but then was up against a guy, Lou Sticker, who was an amazing force of nature in the Australian football industry. Brought Alessandro Del Piero to Sydney, brought Liverpool to town, headed up Carlton in the NSL, all that sort of stuff. And so it's like Matt Windley, journalist that no one's heard of, versus Lou Sticker, who everyone in the football industry knows. Like, it was a non-contest. And I said from the start, the only thing that concerned me about Western Melbourne Group, as it was then, was the fact that Lou was heading it up. Yeah. Otherwise, nothing concerned me about that bid.
Very impressive, though, for a 28-year-old at the time, and to be leading this bid. Like, I'm 27 now. Like, to think if...
You're only 27?
Yeah.
Really?
What did you think?
You don't look a day over 26. No. No.
Like, if I reflect it as me,
you've been around for a long time then for doing that.
Oh, thanks.
When are we doing the Sports Grad podcast with you? Oh, you would have already done it way back in the day, right?
No. I've been on a couple of times, and Ruben interviewed me the other week, so you can listen back to it.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I think for most of us who are like in their mid-20s, late 20s, if you were to say you're leading an A-League bid, most people will think you're nuts.
Oh, I am nuts. Yeah, don't. Let's not.
But I think what I'm saying is very impressive you were able to do it. So,
thank you.
Well done, despite not being successful.
It was successful in its own way.
Successful learnings.
Indeed.
And you've lend yourself to a lot of other jobs because of it. So
Yeah.
next, the bid fails, but then you continue to work with those councils. I think, was it Dandenong and Casey? Was that right?
Correct.
Yeah. To then bring what is essentially Melbourne City moving to the southeast, underpinned by all these plans that Team 11 was.
Yep.
So how does that transition go from the bid fails? Do they just sort of take you in and split the wage across two councils, and then you just keep going on with this project that was already being planned?
Yep, pretty much. So they were so good to me. Like, we all thought, right, that I was going to transition and work over for the club once we got the bid. I took this job with the councils on fully thinking that Team 11 was going to get the license. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. So I've left, a 10 plus year career at the Herald Sun, and, to do this work with the councils. They were indebted to me for that. They knew I'd taken a massive risk. So they said to me, look, we'll give you another year of work, just to make sure. And if we have to shake hands within 6 months because we've all done our dash and you find another job, like, fantastic. But like, you've done, you've turned your life upside down for us. So, out of goodwill, like, we'd love to keep you on.
Yeah.
Can we work on a bunch of different other sporting projects as well? Like, you've got a lot of contacts in the sporting industry. Can we look to do other things? So, for example, Melbourne Storm came out to Casey Fields and started playing preseason games. So made the initial approach to them and sort of worked through that. And that's still a partnership that lives on to this day. Likewise, the Melbourne Rebels, rest their souls. We did a bit of stuff with them. But obviously the biggest thing was still trying to see if there was any life left in the Team 11 bid. We pitched Casey Fields for the home and the Matildas, which ultimately went to Bundoora. So went through a process with that. We had a couple of other funky, ideas and things. But yeah, one of the items on the list for me to tick off was always to just at least ask the question of Melbourne City as to whether or not they'd be interested in moving out. Now, I thought it was a 0.01% chance of happening. But I had a really good relationship with Brad Rouse, the CEO there. Now, he wasn't when I left the paper, but he became CEO, it must have been early 2018. 2019. And so I reached out to him. I said, it'd be great to catch up, hear how you're going in the new job, yada, yada, yada. So we did that. We had lunch, but I had one intention and one intention only. That was to say, hey, you should move out to the southeast. But again, sort of saying, didn't think it was going to happen. But the pitch was very much, whether we like it or not, there's a team in the West now with Western United. Melbourne Victory is this big behemoth in the middle. There's this gaping hole in the southeast that has clearly demonstrated that it wants a team, and it's there for the taking. Would you be interested? So anyway, left that conversation, didn't hear from him for a few weeks, didn't think it was going to go anywhere. Then got a call from him. And I thought in between that time, I think the media, I can't remember who it was, but the media manager at the time had quit. So I thought he was going to offer me a job as a media manager at Melbourne City. But he's like, no, that stuff that we were talking about Melbourne City moving out to the southeast, I've run it up the flagpole and we're interested in exploring it further.
Is that City Football Group getting involved at all? It is, yeah.
If this gets out, we deny it and we walk away and it's not happening, but let's explore a little bit more. So anyway, he said this publicly, so I'm not taking words out of his mouth. They were basically using me and us as a sort of a bit of a stalking horse because they were well down the track of signing a new deal with La Trobe University where they were originally and doing a new facility there. Because I'd always known from my journalism days that the first facility that they had out at Bundoora was always just sort of their first iteration. They were always going to do a 2.0 and they were starting to outgrow the facility that they had in Bundoora. They were the old portable classrooms there, and the pitch was obviously going to need renewing within a few years, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of people have said over the journey, City's just spent all this money at Bundoora and then have walked away from it, when it actually wasn't the case. It was coming towards the end of its useful life, and they were always going to have to do a new facility, even if it was at Bundoora. So anyway, I think they were getting pressure from CFG to at least look at an option outside of La Trobe University, because I think their top three options were all revolving around La Trobe University, whether it be refurb, knockdown, rebuild, or on a new site. So at least they were, Brad and Ian Wilson, who is a fantastic guy who was heading up their infrastructure, is now in New York doing the New York City FC stadium build. they were just, I think, basically intending to come out to Casey Fields, put their foot on the ground to at least say that they hopped out of the car and then wave and then walk off. But I'm like a dog with a bone and sort of sensed the opportunity and just kept laying it on thick. And we all know how it ended. So clearly it worked out that way. But again, I talk about that work experience period. We signed, ironically, the December 2018 was when Western United got announced. It was my daughter's 3rd birthday. December 13, 2019, we signed a heads of agreement with Melbourne City Football Group to say we're going to work on this. Here's the high level terms of what we're going to do. Now, we thought we were going to get that done really, really quickly. And then a little thing called COVID happened. So that was obviously an interesting time and obviously a bit of a worry throughout as to whether or not we were still going to go ahead. Obviously, it still did. But it took like a year to end up doing like all the negotiations, the training-based design, funding agreements, all that sort of stuff. And I think it was again on December 13, 2020, or at least very, very close to that. Ultimately, publicly, we announced that Melbourne City was moving down to Casey Fields.
Interesting date.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is Greg O'Rourke's birthday too, by the way. He keeps reminding me.
So what happened in a year then to go from Team 11 almost exists to a year later now?
So it was 2 years. But I mean, a lot in that first year of obviously laying the groundwork and then obviously a lot in the whole, negotiating, designing, blah, 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 blah.
Does it make you proud of where it's got to? Like, are you happy with where it's got to now with Casey Fields?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's 15 minutes from my place, 20 minutes from my place. I think it's the best. It's definitely the best A-League facility. Sorry, it's the best football facility, I think, in the country. And then, I mean, unbiased, objectively, there's absolutely AFL facilities that are better than what City has down there, but it fights. It's absolutely in that conversation with what they've got down there, which is amazing, and it's a credit to City, and it's a massive credit to the City of Casey, who have invested a lot of money and energy into it. There's more coming. They're on the verge of starting building a mini stadium there, which will be sort of similar to what was at Ironbark, or what is at Ironbark Fields, that will enable them to play all their Women's League games down there, and maybe even like Australia Cup and stuff like that. So incredibly proud. The thing with Melbourne City was always, for us, it was a bit of a game of Russian roulette. Like, we pitched the whole Team 11 gambit to them, and we're like, come down and be what Team 11 was going to be. Have the training base at Casey Fields, have a stadium in Dandenong. Obviously, Team 11 was trying to get in on the basis of having a stadium in Dandenong, and then that would bring the training base. When you're working with an existing club in City, it's obviously the reverse of that, right? That they have already got a ground, they've already got a team, they need a training base. So it was always do the training base first, and then we can talk about the stadium.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to put any words in their mouth in terms of what may or may not happen in that space sort of moving forward. Obviously, I think it's on the public record that a business case has been done for a stadium in Dandenong with the government. It obviously hasn't happened. I'm not sure if it will ever happen, but that was always the risk, quote unquote, I suppose, for Team 11 / the councils partnering with Melbourne City, is that maybe there might not ever be a team sort of playing out of the southeast or a team playing in Dandenong. But again, that was the risk I think that we and I were prepared to take, because when you look at it and go, again, objectively, Melbourne City / Heart haven't done an amazing job when it comes to fan base in an expansion sense. And then Western United, with the greatest of respect, haven't done an amazing job when it comes to fan base. If you're a Sydney-based competition, in the sense of its administration and whatnot, not to mention fan bases right across the country, you're looking at Melbourne and going, there is no chance in hell we are ever putting another new franchises into Melbourne. Like, it doesn't make sense. The last two haven't worked. So even though I know for a fact that a new team playing out of Dandenong would have become one of the biggest clubs in the competition, absolutely unequivocally, I could totally understand the skepticism from the rest of the country. And so therefore, if that was never going to happen, what's the next best possibility for us? Partnering with Melbourne City in terms of providing pathways for juniors coming up. There's a stack of kids now that are part of the Melbourne City Academy that are from the southeast that never would have been given an opportunity under Simon Zapier and the team there. There are a bunch of schools that are doing amazing work with the City and the Community team led by Sunil Menon, a friend of mine who are they're doing an amazing body of work down there and genuinely changing people's lives. There's community outreach groups they're working with MPs. They're doing a bunch of awesome stuff, which for me as a proud, City of Casey resident is really, really important to me. Do I think that they could do really well with having games in the Southeast? Sure. But again, that's totally on them to make their decision as to what they think is the best interests of their club and their future and their fans and whatnot. But yeah, couldn't be prouder of the legacy that their move just as a training base has left in the area.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I think you have to be proud of the legacy that you've played a part in leaving, and no doubt it will continue to grow. I know as a Casey local as well, myself growing up, that part of Cranbourne and Clyde is just blown up, and how much growth it's had. And Casey Fields itself, I remember when there was just a couple of footy grounds and netball courts.
Yeah,
so
it's nuts, right? And it's interesting. I've got this weird still obsession and fascination with Casey Fields. Like I'm really passionate about it. The only person more passionate about it is a guy called Wright Patterson, who's run Casey Fields for many a year and is one of my very dear friends. People always talk about in a footy context or a lot of different sporting contexts, Casey Fields, it's so far away. Like, I was like, well, it's not far away for the 350,000 people that live in Casey, which is literally the biggest council in the country. No, sorry, not the country, in Victoria. It's one of the biggest councils in Australia. It's not far away for people in Frankston or in Cardinia or in Mornington or whatever, right? Like it's the epicenter of, southeast Melbourne. There's houses all around. There's train station. I mean, they desperately need to get a train station at Casey Fields, and they will hopefully one day if they extend the rail out to Clyde. You've had down there now, obviously Melbourne City win A-League championships while they're based at Casey Fields. You've had Melbourne Demons the one year they win a flag. Most of the time they were spent training at Casey Fields because that was the COVID year until they obviously went into a hub. It's an incredible facility where you host state championships and I think they've had a national championships even for BMX, definitely state, little athletic state championships, all that sort of stuff. I personally think that they should. There's one little pocket missing that's still to be developed. I think that they should turn it into a bumper basketball netball center that has, yes, grassroots capacity, which is part of the master plan, but actually more importantly from my perspective, the ability to have 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 seats. And you play Southeast Melbourne Phoenix games out of there. Yeah. You play Melbourne Mavericks games out of there. And I'm telling you, that would absolutely fly as well. It would be huge.
It sounds like your next project.
Don't you worry. I've been agitating for that one for a while. So let's see. Why not?
Speaking of new projects, you then went on to the A-League and helped with the strategy to build Auckland from the ground up.
Yep.
How does the A-League come calling, and then what is that process like? I assume all the experience with Team 11 is a massive help as to how you get that role.
Absolutely. So I think for me, there was always going to be a neat ending point with the councils because I never worked with Melbourne City per se. It's important to be said. Like I was project managing on behalf of Casey and Dandenong. There was always, as I say, going to be a period where it was like, right, I'm done with the councils now. Does that lead to a job with Melbourne City or does it lead to a job with the A-League? I wasn't quite sure where that was going to go sort of until really by happenstance a job came up at the A-League, which I was like, I'm interested in that. And I didn't know Danny Townsend because he started at Sydney FC after the time where I was a journo at the Herald Sun. So I didn't have any sort of opportunity necessarily or reason to sort of meet him. And credit to Brad Rouse, the CEO at City. He made the introduction, caught up with him for it, went through the job application process. Didn't actually get that job, but they created another job for me, which ultimately ended up being, a bit in stuff in community and then also a lot of stuff working on the expansion process. And you mentioned Team 11, like that was precisely it, right? I had this bee in my bonnet about expansion and being really passionate about the A-League and that space and where it should go and sort of, I suppose, helping design a process that was sort of the antithesis of what was the case in 2018 to then optimize the outcomes for the APL, the A-League sort of moving forward in terms of other franchises that they could bring into the competition. So myself and one of my dearest friends in the whole world now, and I keep talking, I'll pause on that for one sec. Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? I've picked up throughout my journey, the best part of this has been picking up like 2 or 3 really, 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 really good friends of mine in each of the workplaces that I've had.
I think it's the
moving forward.
beauty of sport too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Beauty of life. So yeah, myself and Chris Skamitzi, who still works at APL today, devised the expansion process for that ultimately brought in Auckland. I mentioned before that I lived in New Zealand for a few years and was literally 5 minutes away from where Auckland FC is based now, right at North Harbour Stadium. And I was adamant that a team in Auckland would work for the A-League. And then Chris is a Canberra boy. So once we as the league determined the path that we wanted to go down with expansion and that we put our necks out and we identified that Canberra and Auckland were our two markets of choice, by pure coincidence, those two backstories of myself and Chris, I then lent more into Auckland, spent a lot of time over there. Chris lent more heavily into Canberra, spent a lot of time there helping build it up. And then, as I say, with the greatest of respect to Western and MacArthur, the next two teams that came into the A-League had to be successes from the start. Like they needed to come in and have blockbuster crowds and add a lot of, vitality to the league. And so that was where we had to identify the two biggest markets or two best markets that we thought were going to deliver that process. And so, spent a lot of time in Auckland working with Auckland government, local council, New Zealand government, Football New Zealand, local football industry, grassroots clubs, central sponsors, all that sort of stuff to basically ascertain whether or not all the ingredients were there that we thought that they were, and they were. And then we worked to bring an ownership group sort of on top of that. It wasn't originally Bill Foley. There was a local consortium that were working towards it, and then Bill sort of came late into the piece and has clearly done an incredible job helping bring that to fruition. And so, and then Nick Becker and the rest of the team, Steve Corica and Terry McFlynn, took those keys and ran with it, and have.
Why do you think it's been so successful in your eyes?
Two or three things. One, we did the groundwork. Like we ascertained whether or not there was a demand for it. There clearly was, and we built it in the right way. Built the foundations of it in lockstep with Football New Zealand, with the Northern Region Football, with the Auckland, essentially Football Association, grassroots clubs, all that sort of stuff. And then thankfully, the club took that groundwork and ran with it and have been really intensely embedded within their community, which is great. Nick is a marketing expert by trade. They've done some fantastic things, guerrilla marketing and, some really great partnerships with ANZ and the like to sort of get more mainstream exposure. And then, of course, you've got a Bill Foley who was insistent upon the fact that we're going to win. He put really good football people in charge. Steve and Terry have done an amazing job. And then clearly, on the pitch, they've done an amazing job. Now, I think it would have been a success off the pitch regardless of the results. But make no mistake, the fact that they go and finish on top of the table in year one clearly helps their cause when it comes to bringing in fans and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of things that have gone right. But that was a success waiting to happen. And I'm still convinced Canberra will be maybe not as successful, but in the same ballpark. They just need to find the right ownership group. And that's been part of, I think, actually a discipline of this process. The process that we put in place was you put stopgaps in place to say, if you haven't found the right owner, you go back to the beginning and you keep banging your head against a brick wall on that Canberra front until it happens. Don't give away the farm to a less desirable owner and risk ruining all the good work. So I'm still really hopeful that they'll find the right group in Canberra. I'm a bit perplexed as to why there hasn't been an interested investment group so far that's come through, given that obviously Australian government's based there and all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot of obviously opportunities that could come with that. But I still think it'll work.
Another great legacy for you, Auckland as well.
Yeah.
You have to be proud about that.
100%. I can't really say anything more than that. Yeah, 100%. It was really cool. But look, it was a matter of process. I think the APL did a really good job. We did a really good job of putting that process in place. But don't get me wrong, we did 1% of the job, and then obviously the Auckland guys have then gone along and smashed it out of the ballpark. So all credit obviously has to go to them.
Played a part though.
Yeah.
Now you're at Bruce Media at the moment.
Yes.
Do you want to just tell us a bit about what the company does? We'll get to the breaking barriers in a sec, what your job involves, and obviously you mentioned the relationship with Dave Davutovic.
Yes, that's right.
And
We were going to come back to it. Bruce does a lot. We are a marketing and media agency based in South Yarra. We specialize in videography and then just all things sort of storytelling, be that through social media, through graphic design, photography. We do a bit of PR, even though I hate doing it because it just reminds me of journalism days. Marketing, do a bit of events, all that sort of stuff. And then in terms of the industries we work in, we do a lot. We work a lot with companies like Australia Post and IWC and Watches of Switzerland and a few property developers like Intrapac. And we run the Croatian Herald, as you do, get around the Hrvatski Vjesnik. Not many of us in the office can speak Croatian, but don't worry, ChatGPT helps that for us because Dave's obviously Croatian, very big part of it. Do a lot of work with IND. But our number one passion is sport and probably more intrinsically football. A lot of us inside of Bruce have worked either for the A-League, for FA, for the Socceroos, for an A-League club. Our passion is football. And that was one of the appeals for me going and working at Bruce, was that I still felt like I had itches to scratch in the football industry. But then to have a job that wasn't quite in the football industry but still got to touch it was sort of like the best of both worlds. Yeah. And then, as I said before, Dave's one of my best mates in the world. And the relationship that we have is just so trusting that, like, I think 80 to 90% of my time or conversations with Dave is spent saying no to him and saying this is why we can't do things. So basically that's my role, basically to run the day-to-day, sense check things, do all the boring stuff that Dave doesn't like doing, like the HR and the finance and, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, managing the day-to-day affairs of all the staff that we have. We've got 12 full-time staff, 12 permanent staff, a bunch of casuals, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, an amazing environment. They make me feel old every day, which is always good. One of the girls in there famously said once that she'd never posted a letter after I asked her to go and mail something out to someone. She didn't know how to do it. I'm like, oh my God. They don't know what CDs are, let alone cassette tapes and VCRs and all that sort of stuff. So it's very good fun, but yeah, it's
another agency out there that people just don't realise. And I think the more and more I've had exposure over the years, and TGI is an example with where I work, and there's so many agencies that underpin what goes on in the sports industry you just don't realise.
Yeah, and this might sound disingenuous or contradictory to say, but like I can understand. I think where possible, clubs and sporting organisations should try to do things as much as they can in house, right? Because it sort of adds to the fabric and adds to the culture and all that sort of stuff. However, I'm very proud of the way that our organisation goes about doing things, particularly in the football industry, but in others, in terms of just like looking and feeling as if we are just an extension of your company, right? Off the top of my head, we do a lot of work with Football Victoria, but like you wouldn't know it, to your point. We slap all the Football Victoria branding on it. We work closely with them in terms of looks and feel and how they want to do it. The reason that we're working for them is they don't necessarily have the resources to cover the length and breadth of the Victorian football ecosystem. So we come in and help them with sort of big hit projects and all that sort of stuff. So it does take a nuance to be able to sort of come in and actually feel like you are an extension of, rather than a bolt-on that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah. Long may that continue.
A big project at Bruce is the Breaking Barriers documentary, which some people may have seen your face.
Haven't heard of it.
Around the place.
Yeah.
When we are recording this, is episode 4 coming out tomorrow, I think?
Yes. Yep.
So we just found out that Berwick City is the club that of your choosing.
Lots of controversy around that.
Do you want to just tell the listeners what this is all about? Has like a welcome to Wrexham kind of feel.
Yep.
And yeah, tell us your side of the story, and obviously you're the founder of the idea, so
sure,
go for it.
Breaking Barriers simplistically is Australia's version of Welcome to Wrexham, where we are partnering with a grassroots football club, which we now know is Berwick City, to have them rise through the ranks and get promoted into the A-League one day. And we do a documentary following that whole process. Hang on a minute, you can't get promoted into the A-League. There's no promotion relegation. Well, that's where there's the twist on Australia's version of Welcome to Wrexham, in that we're going to run, it's two-speed economy. Yes, we're going to try and get Berwick promoted all the way up the tiers and then into the A-League, but we're also basically, Berwick is the vehicle for us to have a positive conversation about what Australian football could and should be. Now, harking back to that time at the APL, I have a fundamental belief that there should be some form of promotion relegation in Australian football. and that any club across the country should be able to aspire to play in the A-League one day and be able to put a plan in place that'll enable them to get there. And for some, that plan might be 2 or 3 years because like a club like a South Melbourne or a Preston are pretty close as it is. Or for a club playing in Metro 7 like Swinburne FC, who, you know, one of my colleagues is the president of, it might take them 50 or 60 years, right? But if they want to do that, they can get there. Right now, there's not that incentive or that carrot, I suppose, from the APL. But that's like, I feel strongly that for the good of football, the power of the grassroots base and everything like that, bringing together, you know, so many disparate fans and all that sort of stuff. I think it's in the best interest of the game to look at a model like that. And so this project is a conversation starter, really, to run that. So yeah, I've had this idea for quite a while and really only had the light bulb moment of how to execute it, sort of probably early last year, while I was lying on a beach in Vanuatu, as you do. And yeah, we started exploring it in earnest May last year. Approached Berwick City for the first time in July, after going through a proper process internally to ascertain which was the best club. Because the idea is that we could have done this realistically with any club across Australia, but we needed to make sure that we were choosing the best club that we thought, in our opinion, could make this work, both from a logistics perspective for us being based in Melbourne, but also too from a project viability perspective. And then, had a month or two worth of negotiations with Berwick, signed on the dotted line with them, and then started filming what we're calling Season 0, back in August last year. And then, that's what's airing right now. We were originally going to run it on the Bruce platforms, and then I had a chat with my old mate, Dave Weiner, who is heading up the Football 360
I did want to ask you about
website.
This. Where does the collaboration come into play?
So, as I say, we were going to originally run it on Bruce, and I called up Dave to gave him the heads up a couple of weeks before it all came out and said, look, this is what we're doing, this crazy project. Can I write a column about it on Football 360 to promote it? He's like, of course you can. Like, that's amazing. Like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, oh, you should run the episodes on Football 360. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, no, we're going to run it ourselves. So then I went away and I'm like, oh, hang on. Why wouldn't we? Like,
that's a blossoming channel in the football world.
Absolutely. They're doing such a good job.
Yeah.
Killing it. And I'm like, we have got good content. We need an audience for it. They've got an audience and they want good content. And we're all mates. We all trust each other, all that sort of stuff. So it was a very harsh negotiation of about 2 seconds. We came up with a deal with them that meant that we all win from it and we don't lose from it. And so they're distributing the content. Spoiler alert, and again, I've said this, publicly as well. Like, I mean, I think ultimately the aspiration for this one day will be to sell it into a streamer. But was always the intention for the first couple of years, however long, just to have it as accessible to everybody as possible on YouTube, all that sort of stuff, so that we can build that groundswell of support. But obviously, really, really, really proud of our guys. Chris Gospel is an absolute magician, one of the best documentary makers in the country in any field. Thomas Birch-Smith, Jack Levitt, Brock Cullen, all the guys have done an amazing job. We've clearly produced it in a way that is quote unquote Netflix ready, in the sense of like the production values are high, so that if one day, a streamer, we are lucky enough, wants to come along and take the rights for it, everything that we've done to date can be lifted and put it onto their platform, and it won't look out of place. So it's been designed with the end goal in mind, but the early distribution was really important. And the Football 360 guys have been amazing in terms of amplifying the content. I'm not good on the numbers. I'm told that for something that's just come from out of nowhere off a standing start, the numbers are really good. The social engagement's been amazing. And the widespread positivity from the football community has been, really, really positive as well, including we've got off to the side. We love alliteration. So you obviously got Berwick City, where Bruce, the Breaking Barriers documentary, and also the Building Blocks podcast, which is designed. So the Building Block, oh my God, I'm now getting myself confused. The Breaking Barriers documentary is meant for me for the mainstream. My wife is meant to enjoy it just as much as I am. Really easy to digest and understand. The Building Blocks podcast off to the side is meant to be for the football nerds. Longer, really in-deep conversations with people in the football industry, whatever. Talking about the big issues, so episode 1 of that was a full chat on promotion relegation with Vince Rigari. Episode 2 was a full chat on why South Melbourne aren't in the A-League with the president, Bill Papastudiadis, and so on and so forth. So, as I say, we're running sort of a parallel track there. There's the Berwick City side of things, and then there's also the broader sort of like, nirvana of Australian football sort of thing. But it's been a good start, but there's a hell of a long way to go.
Yeah, I think it's awesome as a football fan, but I think even as a sports fan, a little documentary to showcase some of our community and follow along over the journey. It's not like it's a long episode either. I think most of them have been 15 minutes.
We've had a lot of people complaining that it's too short, which I suppose is a good thing, right? Like they're not saying this is too long. I can't be bothered watching this. They're asking for more. So we're checking ourselves. I think tomorrow's episode comes in at, 13 or 14, and then probably the 5th episode of the season, which is the season finale, will be sort of 15 to 20. So it's starting to creep out a little bit.
So your season finale will be out by the time this goes out then?
Correct, yes. So you can catch it all on Football 360, the website, and all their YouTube channels. Go for it.
Awesome. Want to talk about some more holistic and generic problems, challenges people may face in industry and things you've faced in sport. What are the issues with the sports industry you think people should be aware of before they enter?
A lot, and I'm probably giving an answer that a lot of people already said, but a lot of sporting companies, unfortunately, probably prey on the fact that working in the sporting industry is really cool and really appealing, and so therefore probably don't pay entry-level jobs all that well. So just know that there are going to be times when you're getting into it where you're doing a hell of a lot of hours, well beyond the 9 to 5 and well beyond the 40-hour week. And the pay will not be requisite to that. But when you're early in your career and you know, whether you've got partner or not, but definitely before you have kids and all that sort of stuff, that's the time to sort of, go chips in, work your ass off, because then the payoff does come if you can last. Once you move higher up, the pay becomes more, the workload definitely doesn't stop, but the pay becomes more requisite with what you're doing. But you've got to be prepared to slog out those early years, that's for sure, if you want to get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Have you ever felt stuck or lost? And like, if you have, how did you decide to take the path that you have? Obviously, you had a very diverse career.
Yes. I reckon mid 2010s. We've not got a real good term for that, do we?
2010s?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But it doesn't sound right, does it? Like the mid 2020s, the mid 1990s. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Anyway, the mid 10s. The mid 10s. I was probably starting to feel a bit stuck. Probably getting the sense that I wasn't going to be a sports journalist forever, and then probably being a little bit panicked by the fact that I don't have a university degree behind me. And so either if the media industry goes belly up, which will always be there in some way, shape or form, but there was, for a while there were big people thinking that there was a big existential threat to newspapers. Or I woke up and said, I just can't do this anymore. I don't have a university degree to fall back on, and I've got a young family now, or starting a young family, and I need to be able to support them. So what the hell do I do? So I actually started doing a teaching degree while I was at the Herald Sun. So I obviously said before that I did some other study. That was that. Ended up doing a teaching degree part-time while I was also working at the Herald Sun.
Did you finish it as well?
I did. Well, I say that with a caveat. I needed to finish. That ended up running right the way through. I don't think I finished it until I was at the councils. But I kept it going because I obviously would have been, I didn't want to waste sort of the time I put into it, even though by that point then, my career had pivoted and I was like, well, I'm not going to get into teaching anytime soon, maybe ever. But I need to finish this degree because I was then thinking long-term, right? Well, I can use that degree to parlay my way into doing something like an MBA and whatnot, which I did. The obstacle in the way of finishing my teaching degree was having to take 10 weeks off work to go and do 10 weeks of rounds, which I could not afford to do, both from a logistics perspective and also a financial perspective. But the university, Charles Darwin University, let me exit with I satisfied everything with like a Bachelor of Educational Studies or something like that. So it wasn't a teaching degree then per se, but it was like a degree to say you'd learnt a hell of a lot of stuff, which then enabled me to parlay that into the MBA, which was great. I I think I've still got a ticking clock over my head. I think I can come back and do the teaching rounds at some point in time over the course of the next 7 or 8 years, and I can still get my teaching degree. But as I say, I'm very happy now doing what I'm doing in the industry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very nice. In terms of making it in sport, when you've landed your jobs through your career, what do you think made you stand out the most?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think that, well, technically I've only ever applied for one job. The Herald Sun.
Yeah, but even though you applied for the job, you still found ways into other jobs. And I know we always speak about the network side of things.
No. But
people obviously see something in you by trusting you to get you the job.
But I, as stupid as this, I've made my own jobs everywhere else, in a way. Like to a point. If you walk, so the tenacity, the raw writing ability, the intrinsic belief in myself when it comes to the Herald Sun interview process, and just being like, take a chance on me, like, got me through. Yeah. I think, right? Apparently, I didn't get the cadetship because I called the editor at the time mate in my final interview with him, and he didn't respect that because I didn't think I would appreciate things. Yeah, okay. True story. So they gave me the editorial assistant job instead, which, as I said, ended up being great. But yeah, like Team 11 invented myself. So then obviously I was the only person that could get the job with the councils that they needed. Yep. The Melbourne City thing was an extension of that. The A-League, I applied for a job to an extent, but ended up carving out a new job. And then Bruce.
Long-term relationships with Dave.
Yeah.
So relationships is how you get all the jobs.
Well, there you go. Okay, fine. It's a big help. Clearly.
Oh, I know. Definitely.
It's clearly a big help.
Yeah.
But you talk about imposter syndrome, right? Like, it's really interesting. As crazy as it might sound, given everything that we've just spoken about, I actually don't think my resume is that strong. Like, if I were to then go and apply for another job, say like in the AFL or the NRL or something like that, I don't think I'd get past the submitting an application phase. Because I've also not had at any level, because I've not had, you ran this A-League bid that failed, and you helped, you sort of like just made a phone call to Melbourne City to move out to a training base, and like you helped come up with an idea about how you might have a team in the A-League in Auckland. Like, you know what I mean? So I've never had titles along the way. I've never been a believer in titles for myself, which might be stupid and naive. But like, for example, my title at the councils was like project manager or something like that. Or no, project officer. It's project officer.
Which sounds quite junior.
Yeah.
With like the officer title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My title at the APL, what was it? It was something like community coordinator or
community development lead, I feel like. Was it
something like that. Yeah. Right. So I never put any store on like pushing for those bigger titles. And so, I've actually selfishly done that now at Bruce. Like, you talk about like being chief, I can't even remember when this is going out, chief operating officer, chief executive officer. That's sort of transitioning at the moment. There's a scoop for you. Not that it matters. But at least then, like, I suppose I do have on now my resume, like, one title that actually looks half decent. But like the rest of it is just all this wishy-washy crap that like, you might know like the work that sort of has gone into it over the years. But if you're like looking through 100 different applicants for a job at, as I say, the NBL or something like that, and you're like, oh, this guy, like, he's just a...
You're underselling yourself a bit, but I get what you're saying in terms of titles and the like. Do you have any...
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. You've read a bit. Would you say there's any big influences on your career that have helped shape you to who you are today? I know you speak about relationships with Dave and other people that you've become close with. Has it been people similar age, similar stories, people more senior that have had a massive part?
Yeah, Dave's been the number one influence on my career.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I think I'm where I am today because of Dave. The Team 11 bid doesn't get the early traction that it did without Dave's contacts with people like Vinnie Grella, Jackson Irvine, Bailey Wright, Ben Coonan, who did amazing videography work for us early on and helped sell the vision and the dream. And then, like, I have ridden on Dave's coattails a lot throughout my career in terms of becoming known to key people in industry. Like, he, again, that that lack of preciousness in our relationship, where just like what's mine is yours and yours is mine type thing. Like the amount of doors he's opened up for me. He's my biggest fan. I'm his biggest fan. Like it's
Very valuable. Yeah.
It's a bromance in every sense of the word. Even though we are absolutely yin and yang, we are totally different people. Yeah, frustrates the hell out of me every single day, but I love him so much. Like it's So he's undoubtedly been the biggest influence in my career. Yeah. Mike Sheehan was a big early influence on me from a journalism perspective. There's no doubt about that. One piece of advice though that I still live by from a personal perspective is, and I think it's actually really important in this context as well, to sort of say this is like you don't live to work, you work to live. So just always coming back to that sometimes, like even if you have a really bad day in your sports industry job or whatever, like ultimately at the end of the day, and I'm big on this perspective, it's just like not many people out there give a damn about your problem that you're dealing with right now. It's not that big a deal. Go home and see your kids, go home and see your wife or your husband, or hang out with your mum and dad or whatever. Like there are far bigger things going on than what you're sort of dealing with right now. So I come back to that a lot, and it's taken a while probably for me in my life to sort of probably deal with that. But like small example now, as positive as the feedback has been to this Breaking Barriers project that we're doing, there's still been like some negative comments like on social media or YouTube or whatever. I reckon 10 years or so ago, like every single one of those comments would have kicked me in the guts. Like I would lay awake thinking about it. Now, I just don't care at all. A lot of it comes from misinformation and misunderstanding things. So I really actually enjoy that, having that positive conversation and that positive debate, sort of whether it's on social media or on Reddit or whatever, or with people who have differing views, because differing views are fantastic. That's fine. Like as long as you're respectful in your debate, like I'm more than happy to chat to anyone about anything like that. But yeah, in terms of just the haters, it doesn't bother me anymore, because ultimately at the end of the day, the only three people in the world that I really genuinely care about what I think are the three people that I live at home with, and that's my wife and daughter and son. So.
Love that advice. Very good. These ones a bit more reflective. So if you had to go back in time and someone said, I'll give you $1 million if you can land a job in sport journalism, we'll go with, rather than just sport in general, based on your experience, and you got 30 days, what would you do? How would you approach it?
Nowadays, it's very different, isn't it? You build a platform and you want to get into sports journalism now. Like you can't be a one-hit wonder. Like you need to be able to write. You need to be able to get in front of a camera. You need to be able to do podcasts. So you got $1 million. You're building a kick-ass platform that then gives you the elevation to be able to.
You get $1 million if you get the job. So you haven't got $1 million to fund.
Oh, what? Oh, that's far less fun. All right, go on. So say it again.
So basically, the concept is you got 30 days. How do you land a job in sport journo?
Right.
As a sport journo.
Right.
But if you do, you get $1 million as like a congrats. You've done all the hard work.
Okay, fine.
But I still think
you don't have $1 million to build the platform, but you can still build the platform for free. You basically need to demonstrate. I did university lecturing at Monash Uni for quite a while, and I think my number one piece of advice. Well, I had a few, but one of my number one pieces of advice in sports journalism classes was anyone's got an opinion, but like when you get your first job or second job in a media organization, if the media organization is worth its two bob, you're not going to be asked to write an opinion story because they've got senior writers who are there to do that. You're going to be there to write Cats Out on the Mat or a match report, or go to a press conference and write 400 words on what someone said and be able to pick out what the best news items were out of that and weave quotes into a story and all that sort of stuff. So having that platform that demonstrates to a Herald Sun or an Age or wherever that you can do the basics, that you can be trusted to write the stories that they need to have written, but then also demonstrate that you can do the podcasting stuff, that you've got a couple of solid pieces to camera. It's just having that online portfolio available to be able to sing from the rooftops and show. As old school as that sounds, is how I would approach it.
Like it.
$1 million would help because then you could boost and
of course
all that sort of stuff that I don't understand, but yeah. Sure.
Biggest pinch me moment for you working in sport?
Oh, you know what? Right. So
you wrote this in your
I know.
answers.
I know. Sorry. But I just remembered it. So I'm not a fanboy. I'm not. I never once in my career took a photo like with a trophy or like with a player that I didn't know or anything like that. I'm not going to lie. Of course, there's a couple of photos with, some players over the journeys that I am still friends with today. Like, you can have genuine relationships with people. That's something different. The only regret I have of not getting a photo was not for me. It was for my daughter, Evie, on my day off. Wednesdays were all my day off to spend with my daughter, take her swimming lessons and all that sort of stuff. But I had to come into town because Real Madrid played games in the city, in Melbourne, a few times. Yeah. And the original Ronaldo came out like in a March of that year to promote the tour coming up. And so we had one-on-one interview times with Ronaldo. Nicest guy on the planet, like so lovely. And so I'm sitting there here interviewing the original Ronaldo, and I've got my, I reckon, 1.5-year-old daughter, Evie, at the time, sitting next to us, like reading all these Wiggles books and all that sort of stuff, and like charming the pants off all the different, people that were sort of working there and yada, yada. I should have asked the original Ronaldo to get a photo with my daughter, and he would have done it in a heartbeat, just to sort of show that. So I regret not doing that. But so then, biggest pinch me moment, as I said before, I'm a massive Olympics nuffy, swimmer growing up, still a swimmer to this day, open water swimming. Ian Thorpe was a massive hero of mine. Never had the opportunity to meet him or interview him or anything like that. But I was on the table next to him at the Australia Sport Hall of Fame Awards a couple of months ago. You talk about, like, I was a fanboy that night. There were so many cool athletes in that room. Like, Ian was sitting by himself at one point, and I went up and introduced myself to him. And I said, look, I don't want to be that person. Love your work. I promise I never do this. I just wanted to say, hero of mine, always have been. You've done an amazing job in the pool, and then love the stuff you do out of the pool. You're an amazing commentator, yada, yada, yada. All right, that's it. I'm not going to say any more, do any more. Like, I'll leave you tonight. You don't need to talk to me, but I just wanted to say that. And he got a big smile on his face, and he shook my hand, and he said, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I just walked off. That was a fanboy moment for me, just recently.
No photo?
No photo. No photo.
How did you get to the awards, by the way?
Big shout out to the lovely people at WSM Sports Management. They work in our building, and we do quite a bit of stuff with them. And they had a spare ticket because they manage Leighton Hewitt, and he was getting inducted that night.
Nice.
So I got to come along on their table, which was, really cool.
Very good. You spoke about before trying to be an athlete if you didn't work in sport, but what do you think your life would look like if you hadn't pursued a career? Maybe it's being a teacher now.
Mate, I've got zero idea. Seriously. Like, honestly, like, that thought scares me every day. I could not tell you. And I'm not trying to sit on the fence. I don't have an answer, because I've known since I was 6 years old that I wanted to be a sports journalist at the Herald Sun. And I've never thought about doing anything else. So
it's all worked out.
It has. Bloody risky. My wife always used to, used to make fun of me, like, because I would tell her over the registers when I was at Safeway. We were at Safeway. It's like, no, I'm not going to uni. I'm going to work at the Herald Sun. And she thought I was, full of crap. I wasn't. But I don't know what I would do. And again, imposter syndrome. I don't think I have any sort of really definable, really good skills. I know I'm a people person. I can say that. I know I'm a half-decent leader. But couldn't do like any accounting. I couldn't do any sort of, I have no idea what I would do. No idea.
I think, if you've grown up in this environment and this is what your passion was and that's what you got to, I think you're in this space now, so you have no idea what else it would have been.
Exactly. So now I just have to keep faking it until I make it, until I'm 65 and get to retire.
Now, this is the first time we're doing this where we're using a guest question. So I'm bringing this to the show where someone's like Diary CEO, the guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Nice.
And so this podcast is a bit out of order with how we're recording it, because we've recorded you after Caitlin.
That's fine.
But Caitlin Hildyard from Tennis Australia was my last guest, and her questions to you are, what would be the change that would create the biggest impact in your sporting area? Can be related to their profession or not.
Well, clearly at the moment with breaking barriers, it would be the APL saying you can have promotion and relegation into the A-League.
I thought it was quite timely, this question.
It was fantastic timing.
Yeah. And the other one she mentioned was, who would you want to have dinner with in the sporting industry, dead or alive?
How many people?
That's a good question. Let's say
you always got to do your three, right? Is it who are the three you're having?
Yeah. Okay.
Sporting industry
can be dead or alive.
Nathan Buckley. They always say, don't meet your heroes. So I was a big Collingwood fan growing up. Had the pleasure of being able to interview at press conferences quite a few times. Nathan Buckley, and so lovely. Yeah, always treated me with, and everyone, with such respect. Always happy to have a chat. And yeah, I see him around Rustica a fair bit nowadays because we're just down there at South Yarra, and always again same thing. You're busy doing your own thing. I don't need to bug you, but I should one day because I think he's got some really good insights in leadership and life and self-discovery. Have to have Thorpe after that sort of conversation we just had before. And then number 3, even though I've tipped myself into this because I've got to think about there's so many. I do love my tennis. I love Ash Barty. I'd love to have it. See if we can convince her to come out of retirement. I still reckon she's got a couple of Grand Slams in her. They'd be my 3.
This might be a feasible dinner.
Be a great.
Everyone's in Australia.
Thorpe, Buckley,
Are they?
Ash Barty. Yeah.
Is Ash and Thorpe living? They still live in Australia.
I'm not sure where Thorpe lives. He'd be Sydney, wouldn't he? And Ash is obviously up in
Australia.
Queensland. But yeah, we can make it. We'll all come to Sydney. We'll make it. Bucks and I'll come into Sydney because make it easy.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And from your end, what is one question you'd like to leave for the next guest?
What is the biggest myth in the sporting industry?
Like it.
Or what is the biggest myth about working in the sporting industry? You tailor it however you want.
Okay.
Something like that.
We'll keep that for the next one.
Cool.
Well, that's all from me, Matt. It's been a pleasure talking all things sport, football, hearing more about your journey.
It's been fun.
Thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing more from you in the coming weeks, months with Breaking Barriers. So stay tuned.
Please get around it. Yes, but thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Matt.